After we remarried, I started renting out my husband whenever his precious first love called him away. I stopped crying. Instead, I started charging him by the hour. It was $100,000 an hour during the day and $200,000 at night. Holiday rates were at triple. In just 3 months, my bank account swelled by nearly $20 million. Silas was supposed to help me pick out a dress for the gala, then Mindy called sobbing. She had nicked her finger while cutting vegetables. I didn't even look up as I held out my phone with the payment code displayed. In the middle of the night, I came down with a raging fever. Silas was driving me to the hospital when Mindy texted saying the thunder was too loud for her to sleep. I calmly pulled out my umbrella and told him to drop me at the next intersection. Seeing his hesitation, I just smiled. Don't forget to wire the money. Then came the day of my daughter's scheduled heart check. Mindy called again. Hugo wants to go to the theme park. He needs a man to go on the big coasters with him. Silas hung up and turned around, about to give my daughter an excuse. Maisie beat him to it, holding out her hand just like I did. It's okay, Daddy, just pay up. Today is a triple rate day. Silas's face twisted. His guilt was instantly replaced by anger. He stood up and pointed a finger at me, his voice trembling with disappointment. Jade Sterling, is this really how you're raising our child? I calmly pulled Maisie behind me. What's wrong with it? If she can't have love, she might as well have money. I didn't learn that lesson until after our first divorce. Why shouldn't she learn it now? Silas was speechless. His phone rang again and Mindy's son Hugo yelled through the speaker. Uncle Silas, hurry up, you promised to ride the Iron Dragon with me 100 times. Maisie gripped the hem of my shirt tightly. Noticing her movement, Silas actually hesitated for once, reached out trying to pat her head. Be a good girl, Maisie, go to the clinic with Mommy today. Once you're better, Daddy will take you to the park, okay? Maisie ducked away from his hand and blinked her large eyes. Fine, Daddy, just give me the money. Silas's face darkened completely. Jade, you and your daughter can keep playing these sick games, he spat as he stormed out. You're both absolutely impossible. The front door slammed shut, vibrating through my very soul. Maisie tugged on my arm and showed me her smartwatch. Mommy, Daddy sent a lot of zeros. Is this enough for Maisie's surgery? Looking at her pale face, I fought back my tears and pulled her into a tight hug. It's okay, once you're done with surgery, Mommy is taking you far away from here. While waiting for the test results, several notifications popped up on my phone. It was a tabloid leak of Silas at the theme park with Mindy and her son. The caption read, Billionaire Silas Sterling spotted with new flame. The child already calls him Daddy. I zoomed in on the photo, looking at Silas's relaxed smile. I couldn't remember the last time he had smiled like that at me or Maisie. My hand shook as I closed the app. When I refreshed, the post had been deleted. A second later, Silas called. Jade, don't be mad, that was just some trashy media making things up. I've already paid to have those articles scrubbed. I realized he was referring to Hugo calling him Daddy. I'm not mad. Kids say things without thinking, so if I rented you out to them, you should focus on being a good companion. I hung up before he could respond. Maisie's report came back and the doctor said her condition was stable. We could schedule her heart bypass surgery for next month. My legs went weak and I almost collapsed on the floor. When Silas first divorced me for Mindy, he wanted to teach me a lesson. He hired the most ruthless lawyers to ensure I walked away with zero assets. The very next day, Maisie was diagnosed with myocarditis. She was at risk of sudden cardiac arrest at any moment. Because of Silas's influence, no company dared to hire me. No friends or relatives were willing to lend me a single cent. Watching Maisie's health deteriorate, I finally swallowed my pride and went back to him. Finally, today she was out of immediate danger. After confirming the surgery date, I submitted visa applications to an agency. A message from Silas popped up. When are you coming home? I made your favorites. I didn't reply. An hour later, I pushed open the front door. Silas was at the dining table putting food onto Mindy and Hugo's plates. The cozy atmosphere made it feel like my daughter and I were the intruders. Jade, Silas stood up abruptly and walked to the door to take my bag. Mindy's landlord suddenly sold the house and kicked them out. They had nowhere to go, so I thought they could stay here for a while. I didn't say a word. I just watched the movers carry our things into the storage room. Mindy spoke up, her voice weak but her eyes gleaming with triumph. I'm so sorry, Jade, my health is poor, so I need a room with good sunlight and airflow. Silas was kind enough to give me the master suite. Even Maisie's room had been taken over by Hugo. Her favorite doll had been tossed into the hallway, its limbs snapped off. Silas looked a bit guilty. Jade, if you're really against this, I can find them another place. I agree to it, I interrupted, holding out my hand. The rent for you stays the same, but the venue fee for my house and your extra services will cost more. Silas slammed my bag onto the floor, his face turning a bruised shade of purple. Jade Sterling, have you lost your mind? How can you say something so foul? Do you have no shame left? I wanted to laugh. He was the one who brought another woman and her child into our home, yet he blamed me for lacking shame because I pointed out the reality. Silas grabbed Mindy and Hugo to lead them out. As he passed me, he threw a black Amex card at my face. 5 million, is that enough for you? If you love money so much, why don't you just go sleep with it? Once the house was silent, Maisie whimpered as she used a tissue to wipe my face. I realized the edge of the card had sliced my cheek. Mommy, it's all because Maisie is sick. You have to take Daddy's temper for me. I pulled her into my arms. Mommy isn't mad. Once the surgery is done, everything will be better. Maisie used to insist on a bedtime story from her father every night. Tonight she fell asleep in my arms. Her face was wet with tears. Looking at her furrowed brows, my heart felt like it had been crushed by a semi-truck. How did our happy family of 3 become this nightmare? It started after Mindy's husband died. Silas was afraid she'd do something drastic. He spent every night at her place comforting her. He was there so often that the paparazzi thought he was the one cheating. Silas was worried about Hugo. He never missed one of Hugo's parent-teacher meetings or birthday parties. Meanwhile, my daughter was labeled as the child of a mistress at school. She was bullied relentlessly while Silas played hero for another woman's son. The first time Maisie collapsed from a heart attack, I called Silas 100 times. He never picked up because the line was busy. When I finally got her to the hospital, the doctors were diverted. They were told to treat Hugo's minor scrape as a priority. Maisie's heart stopped 3 times while I begged on my knees until my forehead bled. I had to physically block a doctor to save my daughter's life. I took a deep breath and finished packing our bags. Carrying my sleeping daughter, I left that hollow house without a single look back. We spent a week in a new rental and Silas didn't send a single text. Mindy, however, sent plenty. She forwarded every tabloid report of their family outings, making sure I saw them. I looked at the photos with a numb heart. They were at all the places I had once begged Silas to take us. The media outlets were the same ones that had covered our wedding of the century. I'm so sorry, Jade. I told Silas to pay the paparazzi to kill the story, but he said you're rich enough not to care. It's my fault. Maybe I should sell the jewelry Silas bought me to pay for the takedown. Mindy sent a photo of her new diamond necklace, trying to bait me. The old Jade would have stormed over there to tear that necklace off her neck. The current me simply replied, "That would be great, thanks." The status showed she was typing for a long time, but she never sent her reply. Just when I thought they would leave me alone, $10 million hit my account. When I saw the memo on the transfer, the blood in my veins turned to ice. I rushed to the cemetery, stumbling over my own feet. Silas was standing there directing workers to dig up a grave. "Stop it," I lunged forward, shoving the workers away and grabbing a shovel to stand guard. Silas pulled Mindy and Hugo behind him, letting out a cold laugh. "Sterling, didn't you say everything is for rent? If the price is right. I've already paid the rent for your mother's plot. What kind of drama are you staging now?" I was shaking so hard my teeth were chattering. "Silas, are you even human?" He shrugged infernally. "I'm just following your rules. Why, is that a problem, or is it that in your heart every emotion is sacred except for our marriage, which you sold for cash?" I dug my nails into my palms. The rage outweighed the pain. I couldn't understand how the man who once knelt at my mother's deathbed could do this. He had sworn to protect me for the rest of his life. Mindy held a framed photo of a dog, her eyes brimming with tears. "Forget it, Silas Barnaby was family to Hugo and me, but he's just a dog. It's not right to take Jade's mother's spot, even if he needs a proper burial." Seeing her tears, Silas's voice turned like winter frost. "Jade, move." He stepped closer and whispered into my ear. "Maisie's surgery is next month. You need to be a little more obedient right now." The world went cold. "Maisie is your daughter too. Are you really using your own child to threaten me?" Silas tucked a stray hair behind my ear. "She is, but Hugo is my son too. The night before our wedding, Mindy came to say goodbye. I drank too much and made a mistake. You and Maisie have the money and the title. You should learn to be more understanding." I was drenched in a cold sweat. My mind kept flashing back to the image of Maisie collapsing on the floor. Slowly I lowered the shovel. My legs felt like lead as I forced myself to step aside. Hugo ran forward immediately. "Yay, the old lady is moving out for Barnaby." He grabbed the black and white photo off the headstone. He picked up the urn and prepared to smash it. No, my mind went blank as I lunged for it to protect the urn. My head slammed hard against the marble headstone. The world spun and my vision was flooded with red. Silas panicked, trying to help me up and wipe the blood from my forehead. "Are you okay? Do you feel dizzy?" I shoved him away and thrust a legal document in front of his face. "The rent wasn't enough. Sign this." He looked at the bold letters, "Property Transfer Agreement." His face turned instantly cold. "Fine, Jade, you're really something." He pulled out a pen and scribbled his signature aggressively. Then he threw the pen and the papers into the dirt before leading Mindy away. The pen snapped in half. I had given him that pen for our 3rd anniversary. It was the same pen he used to sign our marriage license. I picked up the papers, revealing the divorce settlement hidden behind them. Looking at his arrogant signature, I laughed and cried at the same time. I touched my mother's urn and staggered away. Once Maisie's surgery was over, we would be finished forever. Finally, the day of the surgery arrived. I watched her being wheeled into the OR. I let out a breath and knelt by the door, praying for a miracle. But before the surgery could finish, my phone chimed with another deposit notification. Before I could even check the memo, the doors burst open. Doctors were rushing out, not even taking off their blood-stained gloves. My heart stopped. I grabbed the sleeve of the last doctor. "My daughter's surgery isn't done. Where are you going?" I looked through the window. Maisie's chest was open. The monitor showed only a faint flickering rhythm. The doctor shook me off. "Mr. Sterling's son had a sudden allergic reaction. The whole staff has been called to save him. The surgery is on hold." "You can't leave," I screamed, my voice cracking. I pulled out my bank card. "How much is he paying you?" "I'll double it. Just finish the surgery." I fumbled with my phone to make the transfer. That's when I saw the memo on the last deposit. It was the rent I was paid to buy the doctor's time. "Ma'am, it's not about the money. We're afraid of losing our licenses if we don't follow Mr. Sterling's orders." No matter how much I begged and banged my head on the floor, they pried my fingers off. Maisie was left alone. She was alone on that cold table. She was 30 minutes away from a new life now. Because of her own father, she was lying there with an open chest waiting for death. A message from Mindy popped up. The photo showed Hugo with a minor rash on his arm, but his room was packed with every specialist in the building. Silas was sitting by the bed feeding Hugo a piece of strawberry cake. This text was dripping with venom. "Jade, weren't you the one who wanted money instead of a husband? How does it feel to watch your daughter die right in front of you? If you hadn't remarried him, maybe I would have spared some change for her. You have nobody to blame but your own greed for your daughter's death." I nearly crushed the phone in my hand. Time was ticking. If the anesthesia wore off, she would die in agony. I called Silas over and over. He never answered. As Maisie's heart rate slowed further, I started a video recording. I knelt toward the camera I held against the floor. "Mindy, I'll give him to you. Send the doctors back. I'll give you all the money he sent me, every cent. Once she's safe, I promise to disappear and never bother your family again." Seconds after I sent the video, Silas called back. The moment I picked up, he started screaming. "Jade Sterling, I only called 2 assistants away. Stop being so dramatic. Are you really using our daughter's life to frame Mindy now?" I heard Mindy sobbing in the background. "Silas, it's all Hugo's fault for getting sick during Maisie's surgery. I'm so sorry." Silas sounded like he had an epiphany. "Jade, is this your way of reminding me I haven't paid your rent today? Fine, why be a wife when you can just be a professional gold digger?" The line went dead along with another deposit notification. News headlines exploded. "Greedy Mrs. Sterling rents out her husband, her mother's grave, and her daughter's life for cash. Heartless woman stops daughter's surgery to film fake videos for blackmail." I called 911 desperate for help from another hospital, but the ambulance was blocked by a swarm of reporters who had rushed to the scene. I grabbed a scalpel from a tray and started swinging it like a madwoman. I had to clear a path for my daughter's survival. Back at the other wing, Silas started to feel uneasy. He kept looking at the news, feeling a twinge of doubt. Maisie is in surgery. Maybe I went too far. But seeing Hugo playing happily on the bed, he pushed the thought away. Finally, he stood up and headed toward the surgical wing. When he arrived, the sight nearly brought him to his knees. The corridor outside ORF 3 was unrecognizable. Blood on the floor. A security guard holding his arm, something bent wrong at the elbow. 2 orderlies against the wall, one of them staring at nothing. Equipment scattered, a tray overturned, gauze packets and instrument wrappers spread across the tile like confetti at a disaster. And Jade. She was on her knees outside the door, both palms pressed flat against the glass. Through the window, the operating table was visible. Maisie was still on it. Chest still open. The monitors showing a heartbeat so faint it looked like the machine was tired. Jade wasn't screaming anymore. That was the thing that stopped Silas cold. He had been bracing for the screaming. What he found instead was something much worse, a silence that had moved past the breaking point into something structural. The kind of quiet that settles into a person after they have done everything available to them and there is nothing left to do but wait. She didn't turn around when he walked up behind her. "They left her," she said. "You called 2 doctors away from an open-chest pediatric surgery to go look at a rash." He had no answer. He had rehearsed several things in the elevator. None of them were available to him now. I cleared the hallway myself. Her voice was dry. Flat. I had a scalpel. I was screaming. They were all going to the other wing and I had to physically stop them from leaving. She paused. Dr. Ewan came back on his own. His mother had cardiac surgery in this hospital 11 years ago. He remembered the room number. "He is finishing now." Silas sat down on the floor next to her because his legs had made the decision for him. For a long time neither of them spoke. The monitor through the glass held its faint, stubborn rhythm. "Is she going to be okay?" Jade finally moved. She took her palms off the glass and looked at them. There was blood on one hand, old, dried, not hers or maybe hers. She pressed them together. "She's going to live." Her voice was completely even. "Dr. Ewan says there may be cognitive effects. The anesthesia window was extended by 40 minutes. Memory consolidation issues are possible." She may not remember recent months. She may not remember correctly. A beat. She may not remember you. Silas put his face in his hands. He heard Jade stand up. The sound of her smoothing her clothes, practical and unhurried. Go back to Hugo. She wasn't angry. The anger was gone. What was underneath it was worse, nothing. A clean absence where feeling used to be. He needs someone with him. Go be that. She walked to the chair at the end of the corridor and sat down. She pulled out her phone. She started typing. He watched her for a moment. Her face in the blue light was composed. Her hands were not shaking. He got up and walked away, and his footsteps were loud. The sound of his footsteps was the loudest thing in the corridor. Maisie came out of surgery at 2:47 in the morning. Jade was there. She had not left the chair. She had drunk 2 cups of bad vending machine coffee and made 12 separate phone calls, none of them personal. When they wheeled Maisie out and the attending doctor gave her the summary, successful repair, stable signs. Successful repair, stable vital signs, monitoring required, effects of the extended procedure unknown for several weeks, Jade thanked him. She shook his hand. She asked 3 specific medical questions and wrote the answers in her phone. She went to Maisie's recovery room and sat next to the bed and held her daughter's hand and did not cry. Maisie's eyes opened around 4 in the morning. She looked at the ceiling. Then she looked at Jade. Mommy. Her voice was paper thin. Are we at the doctor again? Yes, baby. Did I fall asleep? You slept for a while. You're going to be okay. Maisie's eyes drifted around the room. Her face was still pale but the color was returning at the edges. Where's Daddy? Jade was quiet for a moment. He was busy. Maisie looked at her. Something complicated moved through those eyes, not a child's confusion but something closer to understanding. As if some part of her that remembered already knew. He always is, she said softly. She closed her eyes again. Her breathing steadied. Jade stayed where she was until sunrise, watching her chest rise and fall. The press conference happened on the 3rd day. Not through any PR firm. Not through lawyers or managed statements. Jade stood alone at the podium in the hospital's conference room in the same clothes she had been wearing when her daughter had surgery, the butterfly strips still on her forehead, her face unadorned and entirely still, and she spoke for 16 minutes. She had prepared for a long time. Not in the last 3 days, much longer than that. The payment records had been exported and timestamped months ago. The message threads were backed up to 3 separate secure locations. The hospital administrative log, showing the reallocation order issued from Silas Sterling's office at 2:14 in the afternoon, diverting a cardiac surgical team from an ongoing procedure, had been obtained quietly. She obtained it while Silas thought she was simply cashing his payments and waiting to be discarded. She laid it all out. The rental system, with full financial documentation. The cemetery incident, with photographs and the property transfer document bearing Silas's signature, and behind it, the divorce settlement he had signed simultaneously, in a rage, without reading past the first page. The messages from Mindy sent during the surgery. The memo on the deposit that confirmed the payment had been made specifically to secure medical staff availability, Silas's own accounting, his own words in the transfer record. And the video. Herself on the floor outside the OR, Maisie's heartbeat visible on the monitor through the glass, speaking into her phone to beg for her daughter's life. The room was very quiet when she played it. She did not editorialize. She stated facts in the order they happened and provided documentation for each one. She answered 4 questions from reporters and declined to answer 2. When she left the room, she went straight back upstairs to Maisie. She did not watch the coverage. She didn't need to. The story ran in every major outlet before noon. By afternoon it had crossed international platforms. The hospital administrative log was the thing that broke it open, not the emotional footage, not the messages, but the cold bureaucratic record of a decision made, time-stamped, traceable. Silas's legal team issued a statement within 2 hours. It described a devoted father, a complicated marriage, and a wife whose behavior had been erratic. They called the rental system evidence of her instability. They called the cemetery incident a misunderstanding. Someone forwarded the statement to 3 of the reporters who had been at the press conference. The follow-up stories were significantly worse than the original ones. 4 of Silas Sterling's primary business partners issued public statements within 48 hours. 2 were dissociations. 1 was a suspension of contract pending review. 1 was simply a press release announcing an organizational realignment that removed the Sterling name from 3 joint ventures without further explanation. The medical board opened an investigation. The hospital CEO gave a statement that did not mention Silas by name but confirmed that a review of staffing decision protocols had been initiated. Dr. Ewan was interviewed. He spoke precisely and without embellishment and his account was consistent with every timestamped record in the administrative log. Silas's firm lost 8 clients in the first week. 11 in the second. The stock price of Sterling Holdings dropped 22% in 4 days. 2 board members resigned. A third called for an emergency shareholders meeting. He called Jade 7 times. She let every call go to voicemail. She did not check the voicemails. Mindy gave an interview on the 6th day. She wore minimal makeup. She spoke softly about being a grieving widow, about leaning on an old friend, about being shocked and heartbroken by the media's characterization of her. She said she had nothing but compassion for Jade and hoped Maisie would recover. Someone in the comments section of the broadcast posted a screenshot of Mindy's message from the day of the surgery. "How does it feel to watch your daughter die right in front of you?" The comment was liked 40,000 times before the network took down the comments section. Someone else posted the full message thread. It had been forwarded by Jade's team to 3 separate journalists. It was embargoed until the 6th day, timed, precisely, for the moment Mindy attempted to rehabilitate herself. Mindy's publicist released a statement saying the messages had been taken out of context. Nobody printed the statement. Mindy's brand partnerships ended in a cascade over the following week. A charity board she sat on released a statement saying her term had concluded. The social engagement on her accounts dropped to nearly 0. People who had been tagged in her posts began quietly untagging themselves. By the end of the 3rd week she had left the city. Jade heard this secondhand and filed it away without further interest. Silas came to the hospital on the 9th day. He had lost weight. Not dramatically, just the particular thinning that happens to people when they stop eating regularly because they are managing a crisis and have forgotten that hunger is a physical thing. His suit was correct, but something about how he wore it had changed. He came alone. His PR handler had presumably advised against this and been overruled. Maisie was sitting up, drawing on a tablet with the focused concentration she'd had since she was small, her tongue at the corner of her mouth. She looked up when the door opened. She looked at Silas. Her face did the thing that Jade had been watching it do for 9 days, the pause, the search, the slight tilt of the head that meant she was looking at something that felt almost familiar but would not resolve. "Hi," she said. Silas stepped into the room. His throat moved. "Maisie. It's Daddy." She looked at him with the open, assessing gaze of a child examining someone she was meeting for the first time, making decisions about whether they seemed safe. "Mommy said some people would come to visit," she said. "Are you from the hospital?" The silence that followed was the heaviest thing Jade had ever been in a room with. Silas's face did not collapse. It simply emptied, the way a house looks when all the furniture has been removed and you can finally see that the walls were never in good condition. "Maisie," he said again, quieter. "I'm your father. You know me." She tilted her head. "Mommy says sometimes I don't remember things right now. She says that's okay." She looked back at her tablet. "If you know Mommy you should ask her." Jade was standing near the window. She had been standing there when he arrived. She had not moved and she did not move now. Silas looked at her. She looked back. "She remembers some things," Jade said. "Other things are still coming back. The doctors say it may take time. It may not be complete." A pause. "She knows who I am. She knows who her grandmother was. She remembers the beach house from when she was 4. She remembers a song you used to sing to her at bedtime." Something moved in his face. "She remembers you sang it to her," Jade said. "She doesn't remember who you are." Silas put one hand on the doorframe. He looked at his daughter, who had returned to her drawing with the self-contained peace of a child inhabiting her own world, and he stayed that way for a long time. "I'll wait," he finally said. "Until she remembers." "That's your decision." Jade's voice was entirely neutral. "Supervised visits can be arranged through the lawyer. There are forms." "Jade, there are forms," she said again. "Everything else goes through the lawyer." He stood there a moment longer. Then he left. Maisie looked up when the door closed. "Mommy?" That man looked sad. "Yes," Jade said. "Is he going to come back?" "Maybe." Maisie considered this. "Okay." She went back to drawing. The final confrontation was not at the hospital. It was 3 weeks later, in the lobby of Sterling Holdings. Jade was there to deliver the property settlement enforcement documentation, triggering the provisions of the divorce Silas had signed at the cemetery. He was coming out of the elevator as she was going in. They were alone. His security detail was 20 feet away. He looked worse than before. Silas Sterling would not allow himself to look broken, but the cost was visible in his jaw and the stillness around his eyes. "The board is voting on my removal Friday," he said. She already knew. "Mindy is in her cousin's province. She hasn't answered my calls. Hugo called me once. He wanted to know why his mom was crying. I didn't know what to tell him." She said nothing. "I keep thinking about the scalpel. They told me you were clearing the hallway yourself because the staff was gone. You were alone in that corridor for 40 minutes. 43. He closed his eyes for 1 second. I don't know how to fix this. You don't. She stepped forward, past him, toward the elevator. She stopped when she was level with him. You used our daughter's life as a bargaining chip. You threatened me at a cemetery. You diverted her surgical team for a rash. You had 43 minutes to call them back and you sent a payment notification instead. She looked at him directly. There is no version of this that gets fixed. There is only the version where you spend the rest of your life knowing exactly what you chose. She's going to remember me eventually. Maybe. She pressed the elevator button. When she does, she'll be old enough to decide for herself what she wants to do about it. That is no longer my responsibility. The elevator opened. Jade. His voice cracked. She stepped in. Turned to face forward. I loved you, he said. Goodbye, Silas. The doors closed. She delivered the documents, signed the receipt, and left through the side entrance. They moved to the coast city on a Tuesday. Jade chose it because neither of them had been there before. No associations. The apartment was on the 4th floor. The windows faced south and there was a small balcony where Maisie decided she wanted to grow strawberries. They spent a Saturday afternoon getting dirt under their fingernails. Maisie's memory returned in pieces. Some of it came back whole, some came back at an angle. She'd remember an event but attach it to the wrong context. She asked about her father occasionally. Jade answered honestly. Once she said she remembered he used to sing to her, but she couldn't hear the song anymore. Jade held her hand and said that was okay. Jade herself was different now. There were things she used to feel freely that now required effort to access: warmth, ease, uncalculated trust. It was part of the accounting. But Maisie was alive. She was growing strawberries on a balcony in a city with no history yet. That was the foundation. Everything else could wait. Jade sat on the balcony in the evenings, after Maisie was asleep, and looked at the water. She thought about her mother, whose grave was protected by an agreement written in blood and rage. She thought about the pen Silas had snapped in half, the one used to sign their marriage license. She hadn't cried when it broke, and she wasn't sure what that meant except that grief is unpredictable. She thought about the window. The 43 minutes. The monitor. She thought, she survived. We survived. Everything past that is ours to decide. She wasn't happy, not in the way she'd been before, but she was here. She was choosing what came next. Her daughter was inside asleep with strawberry soil still under one fingernail. Silas Sterling had lost his board seat on a Friday. His firm was in restructuring. His name was a cautionary example in the press. He lived in the family house alone because there was nowhere better to go. Her lawyer said he sat in the garden until it was fully dark. She had no feeling about this anymore, no satisfaction, no pity. Just the factual awareness of an earned consequence settling into the right place. She touched the railing of the balcony. She thought, this is where we are now. Somewhere new. Without him. It wasn't a happy ending. It was a real one. And after everything, she would take real over happy without a second thought.